Hi and welcome to the Happier Life Project with me, Gabby Sanderson, brought to you by My Possible Self, the free, award-winning mental health and wellness app. If you missed last week's episode, let me catch you up. Throughout July, we're diving into some of the most common struggles people face in romantic relationships. And today's episode, how to date confidently and communicate clearly, looks at another big area many find extremely challenging. We all know communication is vital to a healthy relationship, romantic or otherwise. But when it comes to someone we're dating or is our partner, it can often feel harder to express what we mean, and just as hard to understand where they're coming from. And when communication breaks down, it can leave you feeling truly awful. And that's where today's guest comes in. Hayley Quinn is a dating coach, TEDx speaker with over 3 million views, and a trusted media expert when it comes to love and relationships. She's warm, honest, and gives truly brilliant advice. In this episode, Hayley and I get into what to say when you've been dating somebody for weeks or even months, but you're still not, and I'm air quoting this, official. Why the presence or absence of an initial spark shouldn't make or break a relationship. How the only timeline that matters for physical intimacy is the one you feel comfortable with. Why it's okay and even healthy to let go of someone who's not making you feel secure or valued. And why Walt Disney might have given us some seriously unrealistic expectations about love. If you're ready to date with more clarity, communicate with more confidence, and show up as a more secure, empowered version of you, you're in the right place. Ready to find a healthier, happier you? Let's get started. Welcome, Hayley Quinn, to the Happier Life Project. You're a leading dating coach for men and women. On your website, you say your goal is to get your clients to a place where they love dating.
I know, it sounds like a tough, tall order, doesn't it?
It really does. I was like, even the first dates and the awkward few first dates. Mm-hmm. You can get clients to that place.
Yeah, and I think it's not so much about the quality of the date. It's about trying to approach dating, I suppose, a bit like a form of personal development where you can create a process around it, where even if you don't get the immediate outcome that you want, that you can still find enjoyment or learning or something positive from the experience of doing it.
Okay. The overarching theme of today's episode is communication and dating best practices. But before we get into all of that, I'm really curious how somebody becomes a dating coach, let alone such a successful one.
Right. So unfortunately, I didn't go to dating university and I'm definitely not a therapist.
I thought there might have been a magical dating school that, like Harry Potter.
That would be good. I should set one up one day. But no, it was a complete accident. I stumbled across one many, like 15 years ago. I stumbled across a very clandestine community called pickup artists, which are, don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're men who teach other men how to seduce women. And I was,
oh, wow.
Yeah. And there's a very famous book called The Game, which is by Neil Strauss, which is about that community. So I sort of found out about it and I was kind of 50% horrified because, I thought, oh God, the idea of learning something to have sex with more women, that just sounds awful. And lots of it is awful. But I was also, as a bit of an introvert, quite interested in the idea that you could learn how to get better at meeting people. And then I contacted one of these pickup guys on Twitter. I was posing as a mega fan. I suppose I was a prototype troll. if I was looking back on it. But I managed to infiltrate sort of some of their workshops and seminars, which, I mean, it wasn't really very difficult as a 20-year-old woman it was not a big achievement to be able to do that. But I sort of went in, and I was quite surprised actually that whilst there was some bad stuff being taught, there was also some really interesting things. And lots of the men weren't these like horrendous manipulative people. They were actually people who felt quite disenfranchised by modern dating and didn't really know how to get started with it. So I felt a lot more empathetic towards them. Anyway, I got asked to be a ghostwriter for something's pickup artist. And I got asked to speak as like the woman's opinion, at their pickup events. And eventually, after working that world for several years, I splintered off, started up my own company with this idea that I was going to take some of what I perceived to be the good parts of that world, which is the personal development, the social skills, learning, but apply it so it wasn't just a man to woman thing, that it could be an everybody thing, and make it much more egalitarian and hopefully a lot more ethical in the process. And so then I started to reverse engineer things for women. And whilst we mainly work with sexual men and women, I'm very much open door policy to anyone who would like to learn about it.
Amazing. Are we sold the wrong impression of what love is and what love should be?
I do think Walt Disney has a lot to answer for.
Okay, we're going to Disney.
Because I think I speak broadly of our generation. I'm a millennial, but I think Gen Xers, today's daters, we had a diet of rom-coms, Disney. A lot of emphasis was placed on the spark. It was very much about serendipity or fate, or, there was this magical finish line that you cross and everything's okay. And I think so much of that just completely does not relate to our modern day experience of dating, because also I remember thinking, my mum got married when she was 24, so I'll probably get married at 24. And again, just as a society, we've shifted so far beyond and so quickly, especially with technological evolution and dating apps. So almost like our expectations were misaligned from the start. And I think dealing with that and kind of, again, finding a different, more realistic way to meet a partner or partners is one of the big things I like to look at.
I've noticed recently as well, Disney have even shifted on their kind of storylines, like with Frozen, it's about the sisterly love. And I think they are kind of trying to open it up a bit more than boy meets girl and they fall in love after meeting each other once.
One day my prince will come.
Yeah, exactly. And I know this is a very big question, but how would you, and we're looking at this through the lens of romantic love, how would you define what love is or what love should be?
Oh, well, I think that's going to be a personal definition for everyone. For me, I'm going to say it's that sense of safety, harmony, ease of communication, mutual respect, understanding, shared goals. I would say it's more in that camp of stuff than a massive spark, exhilarating. I think I would personally define that as infatuation. There's people that talk about this, that's their work. Esther Perel is one who's really famous for looking at that, like in her book, Mating Captivity, that we have this funny thing where we have romantic love, that first date feeling of we're looking for the spark. But then ultimately, many of us want to get to this place of long-term relationship stability. And those two things feel very different. And in some senses, what makes one work, it doesn't make the other one work. So to try and find all of that within one person can be really challenging. And I think also perhaps if we go into a dating experience with these storylines or narratives around dating of when I've met the one, I'll just know, very fatalistic. I think again, that can make our judgment process around who in, the real physical world could make a good partner to us. I think it can get us onto the wrong path with that.
Well, I'm thinking, because you've mentioned about the spark a couple of times, and I'm thinking of a conversation I had with a male, 29, Italian actually, and he said to me, if you don't have a spark initially, then for him, it's like, well, there's no future, because if you don't have the spark within the first year when everything's supposed to be exciting, then how can you expect to still want to be with the person a few years down the line? But then what you're saying on the other side of that is, well, the spark dies, and then, you know, what's left? It's like a sparkler.
Yeah, exactly. And you move from, they say, passionate to compassionate love. So this idea of, oh, this is really exciting, to, oh, you know, we're really good friends, or I really respect this person, and we've built a partnership together, and it's just you can't compare the two states of being. But I definitely think this is certainly my personal experience as well, that sometimes I think if we feel like we have a really strong spark, that somehow equals greater chance at that long-term compassionate love. And I'm very skeptical about that. I don't think it's a great precursor or a sign for what's to come.
And I think, like, when you're talking about this spark, and certainly I've had conversations with other female friends about, well, if you don't want to jump their bones, shall we say, then like trying to date somebody for a while, and maybe that would grow, but then maybe it might feel a bit icky to actually have a sexual relationship with somebody when you actually really like them and you can see they're a genuine person, but you want that spark. Are we again looking at things the wrong way round? Should we not be maybe jumping into bed with people too quickly?
Yeah, I think, you know what, it's always going to be, there's a scale, right? I'm definitely not saying you should, you know, you're thinking you've got the feeling of the ick. We all know what that is. That sort of intangible. Ugh. So I'm not saying that because again, if you forced yourself to date someone when you experience, I guess, almost repulsion or, you know, a strong negative feeling, that's not going to do much for your self-esteem, right? Because you're just saying, oh, this is all I can get. So I'm not saying we go that extreme. Likewise, though, I'm not saying we go so extreme that we feel like we need a Walt Disney movie beginning in order for a relationship to start. Because I also think as we mature as people, this is one of my other theories on this, when we mature as people, we experience the spark less often. And I think I remember, for instance, I don't think I was probably the only 16-year-old girl that was like this, but I felt the spark left, right and center, you know, in my late teens, maybe early 20s. And then it became much more of an infrequent event. And I don't think that's necessarily because suddenly I was meeting much less sparky people. I think that's, again, sometimes to do with maturity, life experiences, events shape us. We're not necessarily so willing to jump in. Perhaps we need more time to build trust with someone. Perhaps we've decided that any ideas that we had about our type have actually been proved terribly wrong through, you know, recent dating experiences. So again, I think whilst it's a nice to have, I definitely don't think it's essential. And I think connections can grow, but you're not looking to go from, but you could, if you're thinking, oh, they're quite, you know, seem like quite a decent person. I like them, easy to talk to, you know, enjoyed their company. I'm like quite looking forward to seeing them again. I think like that's a more realistic ballpark for the early days.
And then just kind of getting into communication a little bit. Maybe then it's like you like them, but say you can sense that, or it's the rule of thumb of it's been a few dates, it should be getting a little bit physical. You know, I'm speculating here, but then if you need more time in terms of communication, it can be a bit awkward, right? No?
I think it's the awkwardness. I think awkwardness would come from either, first of all, like judging that your sense of how your timeline for how you want to do things is somehow wrong. And I think actually, we're all individuals and we all probably have very different senses of when is a good time to have a physical relationship with someone. Some people will be in the good to get that out of the way, see what's going on there, school of thought. Other people be like, actually, you know, I do get emotionally attached. I've been let down enough times. I need to take my time. And I think, you know, live and let live wherever you are at on that spectrum. So I think take ownership of that and don't feel too awkward about it. And I would also say it's a bit of a compatibility thing. If you can't express to someone, you know, I'm enjoying this. I'm just someone who likes to get to know people slowly. And if they're not receptive to that, a statement that's that's just a benign statement of where you're at with things, again, I think that's part of your filter And that's a real point of compatibility.
And maybe a red flag if they don't receive that too kindly.
Exactly. So someone who can't receive a no. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say communication is key, whether that's dating or in a committed relationship, when it comes to having a healthy relationship?
Obviously 100%.
Yeah.
Who can say it's not? And I think, again, like, such a compatibility thing there. If you feel like you're constantly having to sort of maybe not even hide, but you find it hard to be open or authentic, again, that goes back to that sparky feeling of almost being on tenterhooks, like, I'm going to be judged for everything I say. Again, is that really a great sign for the relationship that follows? I'm not sure. I think ease of communication is really important. And of course, this can get complicated when a lot of people are meeting one another on dating apps, because often how you feel you communicate messaging someone doesn't correlate well with how you actually communicate when you're in person with someone as well. So the more personal forms of communication, even if it's an old-fashioned phone call or leaving voice notes, again, it's slightly better tells of how much ease of communication you're going to experience. And I think that's really, really important for compatibility.
But it's really hard to do, isn't it, for some people more than others, I guess, be it in person, in texts, in calls, through a dating app. So when we look at building confidence and self-esteem in the dating world, I know that's something that you help your clients with. If you're feeling good about yourself, I guess communication comes a lot easier. Do we fake it till we make it? Because a lot of people do suffer with their self-esteem, because we know, being a mental health app, that when we ask people what kind of topics do you want us to cover on the podcast, or would you like to see more series of, self-esteem and self-love is always top of the list. So there's a lot of people that really struggle with knowing their worth. And again, that's why we wanted to do a relationship month, because of this, and speak to people like yourselves. So yeah, do we fake it till we make it on the get-go? Because it's really hard.
Yeah, it's complex how you approach it. So, for instance, if you think, I'm faking it until I make it, that's probably a good way to psych yourself out from doing something, because you may not feel then that you're being accepted for who you actually are. But then people will be like, well, I have been trying to be who I actually am and I keep getting rejected. So how do I work through this? So I think a few things. First of all, I am a big fan of learning about communication skills. So different ways you can put something across. So it's kind of like talking a slightly different language, because sometimes having that knowledge, it gives you competence, which in turn gives you confidence in how you express yourself. That's why I know for some people, they might think, learning about communication skills, that could be manipulative. I actually think for the vast majority of people, it doesn't need to go anywhere near manipulation. It's just about, how can I express myself? How can I get my meaning across in a way, because I feel this intense social pressure, or I feel anxiety, or like I'm worried about someone's going to reject me. So sometimes I think learning about that can help people to move from point A to point B, where they can express themselves more clearly. The other thing I think of is to, again, this is harder. The mindset shift really is, well, it isn't about me being judged by somebody else. This is, if anything, an equal process of we're equals, and we're seeing if there's a match. And I just accept that because I'm an individual and they're an individual, I'm not going to match with everybody, and that's okay. So sometimes the actions that I take, as I said, are a bit of a filter towards that. So if I do express a healthy, loving boundary, like, it's important for me to take things slowly. If someone isn't receptive to that, it's not like I've done something wrong. I've, not played the game correctly, because actually my big overarching strategy isn't to just impress this one person. It's to find a partner or partners who are most closely aligned with who I am. And so that, again, takes quite a lot of courage, because it means also practicing things like an ability to let go, or not needing to, I guess in real dating speak, not chasing, allowing situations to go. But that rests on, again, building this idea of your sense of self-worth, which is, I believe that there are lots of good people out there. I believe that there's going to be many people who can make me happy. And I believe I deserve better than how I'm interacting with this. But I deserve better than just to be in a situationship, because that's actually not what I really want. So it's, again, I'm kind of glossing this because this is a shortish podcast, but that it's a journey for people. When I'm coaching people, we look at, okay, what's the ideal mindset that we're working towards? And then what are some action steps or some little exercises that we can practically do today to just slowly move the needle towards that more integrated, confident version of yourself that's in there. But it's, again, it should come from authenticity and free expression rather than trying to be this sort of like perfect, super charming every person.
Right. And it's getting out of your own way, I imagine, as well. And probably fear is a big factor here. It's the fear of being rejected, fear of saying the wrong thing. You know, the mind, again, it can just start...
play tricks on you.
Yeah, yeah.
Time.
So what do you think about, like, if it is that, you know, some people might almost be paralysed with even the thought of, like, speaking to somebody in person or on an app. And so how do we get over our own sort of worries and concerns in that respect?
So what I think you touched on there is a really important point. So I think I'm someone who's had nothing super, but I've had a lot of anxiety in my life, and I really know how much anxiety can get in the way, meddle with you, you know. And I think things like, there's a point where my work would come in, which is I feel not that confident about how to go about this, or I could maybe talk to someone if, but I'm not sure about that. Paralyzing fear, that's anxiety. And it could be, I don't want to talk to that person. It could be, I was getting ready for my date and then I sort of thought of something I needed to do and I just had to cancel. I couldn't possibly go out. It could be telling my friends I'm going to meet them on a Saturday night, and actually I get there and I just don't want to leave the house. I don't feel comfortable, or I haven't heard back from that person they've read my message, they haven't replied immediately. Now I'm starting to really, it's an obtrusive thought.
That's a big one. I
can't get away from it. I keep looking at my phone. It's times like this where you've got to go, I'm not having a problem with dating. I'm having a problem with anxiety interfering in my dating life. And I need to do some work here to look at the underlying anxiety. And whether that's medical or therapy, it's about recognizing it for what it is. And for myself, my own anxiety, which I guess I have social anxiety, which is a funny thing for a dating coach to say. And also health anxiety is still something that's in my life. But for me, knowing what it was and identifying it as that made it so much better, because then it was like, it wasn't just this specter of something that was interfering. It was something like, okay, so with my health anxiety, I learned to say to myself, there's nothing wrong with me physically. The only thing that's wrong at the moment is I'm experiencing some anxiety, and that's all right. And I need to work through that. So again, if you can see where it's popping up for you, there's going to be so many routes to get support and help through that. But there's a real definition of, I would say, if you're experiencing intense feelings of anxiety, that's the place to start. In a more therapeutic place, things always go up and down, but somewhat on an evener keel. Then look at the dating coaching side of things. So I'm always like that with the people I work with, because I think for mental health, it's so important that we get the right support and we recognize what's really going on. It's not that someone hasn't texted us back, it's anxiety.
Yeah, well, I have to kind of take that thread and run with it, because I was going to talk to you later on in the conversation about your 2016 TEDx talk, but I feel like it's appropriate to bring it up here. It was just amazing, Hayley. It was just, you're such a good speaker. Searching for love to escape ourselves. And so this was all about, you say the line, in our quest for love, sometimes that can be the ultimate distraction to fixing ourselves and doing the real work that will actually make us happy. And I had to bookmark that, because I was like, that is so true and profound. But maybe it's just not something that we we're thinking about dating, we're not really thinking about ourselves, you know?
And this is where I think for me, dating is or can be just definitely a form of, I know it sounds very woo-woo, but it is to me a form of personal development and self-actualization, because what I realized is I'd basically spent most of my 20s, you know, first of all, learning this cool pickup stuff, which was like a mask that I could hide behind, or a superhero cape I could put on to stop me confronting, you know, anxiety. Or I'd go out and I'd be, you know, party really hard and be very focused on who my cool friends were. And again, it was avoidance of anxiety. And it didn't really get me very far. So I realized I was just chasing, because when I realized I was so preoccupied again with these intrusive thoughts and really focused on someone else, that was a good way of not looking, being introspective and really fixing anything. So again, it's funny because as a dating coach, even now, I know, for instance, my most popular blog is he hasn't texted in 2 days. That's what Google likes the most. So that's just funny because it's the top line thing. That's what someone will search for, that they think is the problem.
Right.
But really, there's going to be this layer of other stuff that's happening for them.
I was going to ask you, in terms of dating best practices, like if you don't hear from somebody in those early courtship days, what is the appropriate thing? Because it does generate so much anxiety and worry, and it's detrimental to our mental health. But then, actually what you're saying is it's something far deeper than, oh my God, I'm losing him or her, and oh, what have I done wrong? And you start with the ruminating thoughts and the shame spiral and beating yourself up. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sure you've got lots to say here.
So remember, first things first, in these early stages of dating, don't put someone on a pedestal too soon, or don't decide that they're your, like, you know, that you really want to be with them too soon. Because this right now, everything about how you interact with one another and communicate, this is telling you something about how well you fit together as partners. So just because you had 3 great dates, an amazing kiss, sparks are flying, that doesn't equal, you know, 2 + 2 doesn't equal 12. That doesn't equal, you know, love of my life. So just, again, it's like, you have to go firmly back into the present moment. Mindset, everything is a filter. So how someone's communicating me with, is it easy? Do I feel secure? That's, again, signals of how compatible you are. Finally, when someone hasn't messaged you and it's been a noticeable gap of a few days have gone by and the communication patterns broke, don't always immediately assume that's to do with you. People have their own lives that they are leading. And remember, if you've only been on a few dates with them, you only have a small snippet of their life that you're aware of right now. You're still really in the process of getting to know them. So I would, if you want to interact with them, do it in a non-judging way that doesn't create a storyline that it's something to do with you. So instead of saying, oh, you know, have I done something wrong, or what's going on, or something that's very barbed or has a really narrative of this is something that is being done to me, I just observe and what's going on. So you could say, hey, it's been a minute, just want to check in and see how you are. So I just keep it neutral and observant. Then how someone handles this is, again, a really important filter for you. You know, do they come back to you and they really authentically express, oh, you know, I had all this stuff going on in my life, and, you know, blah, blah, and you think, okay, that resonates, that makes sense to me. Do they ignore that outreach message? Trust me, if you send that message, that is a neutral message. There's nothing that's going to put someone off by saying that. Have they ignored it? Did they gloss over it and pretend that nothing happened? Is that a pattern? You know, have they done this more than once before? All of these things are telling you something. So again, I'd make it less about your acceptance or rejection, or more about the process of working out whether you are aligned or on the same page, potentially, as partners. Remember, you need ease of communication and someone who is receptive and don't always assume it's to do with you.
I guess where things can sort of take a turn, because we are so connected digitally now, we can see when somebody's read our messages, right? Especially like WhatsApp. We can see when somebody's online and you're thinking, well, why didn't they reply to my last message? We can see when somebody's been on Instagram or when they're on Instagram. So, you know, we can see. So if they're on Instagram, why can't they reply to my message?
And then that could be expectation. I expect someone who I've been on 3 dates with, who I had a romantic kiss or whatever with, I expect someone at this stage to be replying to me as a priority. Other person might be, right now, I'm here with my friends, I'm in the present moment, these are people I've known for years, I'm enjoying myself. I will get back to this person, but not right now. It's not a priority. So again, that doesn't show definitively, but it could definitely show that there's maybe some misalignment in terms of expectations. Also, be cautious of checking. Very tempting, being there myself. But again, when we check, what we're usually trying to do is basically we don't have enough information. We're in the unknown. It's creating more anxiety. So rather than have any communication around that, or, you know, even self-reflection, which I think is better to work on that anxiety. Sometimes it could be like, I'm just going to investigate and then I'm going to try and stitch together a narrative. So I can see they were last online at this time. They read my message at that time, and their Instagram, they've been tagged with this person, you know, and suddenly.
Oh, and it's awful. We're torturing ourselves.
Exactly. It's torture, and it's trying to get control because you feel out of control. Yeah. And part of, I think, what's so hard about the early stages of dating is that you are in this place, you just inherently, that's it, you're in the unknown because you just don't know this person. You are in and that it's unknowable until you've spent more time with them. And the helpful things I find to say is just be like, you know what, I'm in the unknown. I don't know. I'm not even going to try and figure it out, because even if I gather every piece of information, I'm not going to be able to draw a good conclusion at this stage. I probably need to interact with them more, or have a conversation with them, or give it some more time, and time will reveal, you know, rather than trying to get to that answer too quickly, and probably the wrong answer, because again, that's that anxiety of being in the unknown. So it's really hard to let go of that.
What do you think of quantum dating? Like having a few people on the go at the same time? Because I know some relationship coaches are all for this and see it as good practice, or keeping your options open. I've seen you say things to the contrary. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and I'm going to bring this back to personal preference and morality, which is different. And I wouldn't say that, you know, for instance, someone who wants to date in a linear fashion, one person at a time, versus someone who wants to maybe meet multiple people. It doesn't have to be sexual. It could just be meeting people for walks or coffees. It's not saying that as less moral. It's just a different perspective on things. Whichever way you go about it, the important things are that you slow it down, you assume nothing, you don't build expectations too quickly, or you become aware of when you are doing that. For some people who do the multi-dating thing, you know, quantum dating, as you called it, they might feel like, you know what, I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to get to know a bunch of different people. I'm not going to put too much thought into any one person too soon. And I think there's logic in that, provided that you do a good enough job of communicating a little bit around your expectations, you know, and where you're at with things. Also, dare I say it, I think in the world of modern dating, we have another issue, which is we've added this extra step to commitment that didn't used to exist, I don't think, in the past, where we have to have a conversation. Usually there's a conversation to declare what something is. And I would say not always, but generally, unless you've had the conversation, I wouldn't assume that the other person is just dating you. And that doesn't have to be from a malicious place of sort of infidelity or sowing their wild oats. It could literally be that they fall more in the quantum dating camp, and people's expectations can be radically different. Some people would feel pretty cheesed off to find that someone they were sending lots of nice messages to on a dating app was simultaneously messaging other people. Some people would just be like, you know what, until we've had that conversation and until we're physically intimate and all that stuff, like, we're not in a committed relationship. So I think you've got to choose what feels right for you, but do it with the awareness that this is a subject that people are on very different pages around. And so the other person may not see things in the same way as you.
Yeah. I mean, what if you've been dating someone for a while and it is physical and you are wanting it to be a committed relationship, whereas the other person is very clear about it, we're just having fun. You're having great sex, you're having great dates. But then the time in between, you've got that anxiety. Who else are they doing this with? I haven't heard from them in a few days. Does that mean that they are out spending their time with somebody else? And then there's the fear of bringing it up because you really like the person, you don't want to scare them off. What do you say there? Because I think this is an area that people really struggle with too, in terms of like, they think, well, maybe if I just bide my time, this person will see the light and again, it'll become a Disney movie.
Yeah.
But it's been 5 months, you know?
Okay, yeah, 5 months. I was going to say, if it's been 5 days, probably just let it, let's just give it some time. If we're talking weeks and months and dates are going by, first of all, get clear about what you want. If that is a committed relationship, then I wouldn't be trying to twist anybody's arm into having that committed relationship with you, because whether someone wants a committed relationship or not often isn't a reflection of, again, your self-worth or how good the sex is or your compatibility or anything like that. Sometimes it can be just an expression of where that person is at in their life at the time you met, and people, I think, often needs to consciously decide that a committed relationship is something that they want in order to commit to it. It's not that they meet someone and they're like, wow, I'm blown away. So get clear about what you want, provided it's not ridiculously, as I said, date to, communicate instead of saying, where is this going? Or what do you want? So I would have stick away from questions, and I would stick away from initially putting it to the other person. Instead, express yourself. So I'm the kind of person that when have a physical relationship with someone or when I feel a connection, I just not really interested in doing like the dating apps. I just want to focus on this right now. So again, you can state where you're at. Then you have to listen to what they say and listen carefully. Do they say, I'm exactly the same? And then great, you might be going into the what are we conversation, or they may change the topic. Or they may say, actually, I'm sort of just really enjoying exploring right now and I'm open seeing where this goes, but I wouldn't want to mislead you. You have to listen, then you have to radically accept what they say, because sometimes someone can say, I'm just enjoying myself right now, not really looking for anything. But then you could be messaging them every day and having a physical relationship with them. And that's very confusing. But listen to what they've said, explicitly. Then if that does not align with what you want, this is hard because this is self-esteem, which is, I believe that whilst I have a great connection to this person, I'm hearing what they're saying and they are just not looking, at least at this stage in their life, for the same things as I am. I trust that there are actually plenty of other people that I can experience a connection with. Like, I can obviously do that. So in a nice, gracious way, I'm just going to have a boundary here. I'm going to let this go. So it could be saying, you know what, like, thank you for being open with me. That's good, like really good. I respect that. But ultimately, I feel like we're probably looking for different things. So you can either end it, or you can choose to really reduce the time you put into it. Or, maybe there's someone that you meet up with every 2 weeks for a coffee just to like, if it's not emotionally confusing for you. But most people can't do that.
Yeah.
Most people have to let it go. But in letting it go, it's a win-win. It's a win because either what's going to happen is you take yourself out of a situation which can potentially damage your self-esteem through continually accepting less than what you want and feeling like you're not being chosen. And you give yourself a big thumbs up to your self-esteem, and then you take that improved self-esteem and you go out and you meet one of the many people who can give you what you want, or you give the person the time and the space that they need to, work on themselves and reflect and actually come to a clear decision that is something they want. Because when we create a healthy boundary, it's actually a very attractive thing to do, because by enacting that boundary, we're showing that we believe that there's other people that are out there for us. And it's that self-belief and that self-esteem that's really attractive. So it's the most scary, horrendous, spend a weekend crying thing to do, but it's so good. It's such the right call. And then, you know what, if the person keeps coming back and there's a 50-50 promise and the cycle begins again, recognize the cycle. You need someone who is not necessarily exactly from the get-go, but for nearly from the get-go, looking for exactly the same things as you, and where it's easy and it just flows. So don't, again, preserve your time, preserve your motivation, preserve your self-esteem.
Do you think that we get stuck in these unhealthy relationships partly because maybe we are drawn a bit to the drama, but also partly because there's this fear of scarcity? And, because you can go on these apps and you can be swipe. And I mean, you're window shopping, aren't you? And how much can you really tell from a photo and a few cheesy one-liners? Yeah, I think there's that, especially if you've not been dating anybody in a while or been in a relationship for a while. You think, well, if I let go of this one, I'm going to be on my own again.
Yeah, and you're so right that sometimes literally the feeling of I just can't be bothered to start dating again. I just don't want to go back out there. That keeps people stuck in bad situationships, all the time. But I think, again, remember, you're not actually back to square one. And every time you're with someone, there's an opportunity cost to all the other people you can meet. There's also this economics term, which is called sunk cost fallacy. So the more you invest in something that's not working, the more time and energy and effort you try, you're just getting more tied in to the situation. You've got that, you really, really want it to come right because you've tried so hard. So it's just human nature.
Yeah.
So I think, again, it's so difficult. But again, this is why I'm sort of on a mission. I'm not just about people getting, coupled up. That's nice. But it's also about make single life great again. Because when it's not a bad option, then actually it gives you this feeling of empowerment to walk away from those situationships.
Make single life great again. Is this the premise of is it like a club that you offer?
Yeah, well, we do so much stuff. So we have online clubs, we've got digital courses, because lots of people that follow our work are in America or the other wider world. We also take people out.
Ooh.
We have something for men, something for women.
Where are you based?
But we're based in London.
Okay.
And we actually help people to meet people in real life, which is wow.
Old school. Love it.
Old school, but I think it's we've got an event called Training Day for Men and Secret Place for women. And they're just really incredibly supportive workshops that teach you how to overcome a little bit of social anxiety and start to meet people in real life. And it's, again, make being single great again. It's about, can I make dating enjoyable and fun and interesting, and therefore feel better about it? And yes, we also have the HQ Club, which is an online community, if you're not based anywhere near the capital. So we do loads. But it's all seeing dating through this really personal development lens.
That sounds awesome. Some people will say they are just really bad at flirting. Is this something that can be worked on? Do you have any tips here?
100%. First thing I'd look at is why. Why does someone feel awkward around flirting? Is it because they feel shame around sexuality? They don't like to be seen. They feel it is somehow bad or wrong. They've experienced lots of rejection in the past, and so they find it hard to show intentions clearly. Lots of men I work with will find it hard to express intentions. They listen to me too. They are now like, don't know how to put that across, don't want to be creepy. Lots of women I work with, speaking general terms, will feel shame. I don't like to make eye contact with someone I see at a bar or a coffee shop, because that makes me feel really like, awkward, like I'm putting it out there or something.
Yeah.
But you've got to get to the root, what's going on there. And then like practical exercises. Flirting is wonderfully subtle most of the time. It can be learning, for instance, if you're someone who wants to be, I suppose, the person who initiates. How can I use more language of initiation? How can I like set up the date or be the plan creator or the organizer? Or if I'd like someone to initiate with me and I prefer to receive attention, how can I be receptive and, learn how to say thank you or be inviting to those ways of interacting? How can I feel somewhat comfortable with touching somebody's arm? How could I get better at expressing that I like something about someone or giving compliments? So there's small places that you'd start, like getting better at giving compliments, getting more comfortable with not just physical touch, but within our physical bodies, understanding what's holding you back, maybe making eye contact with people. Like, again, there's tons of little exercises I would potentially teach someone that would just gradually move them to a point where flirting doesn't feel awkward.
What about, because this happens a lot, somebody that comes in super hot, like, oh, you're the one, you're amazing, it's an amazing couple of months, they've pulled you in, you're completely hooked, and then they start to withdraw, and then you're not hearing from them so much, but just enough that they're sort of giving you the little breadcrumbs.
The little breadcrumb. Yeah, I think, remember, if they don't know you to love you and you don't know them to love them at the start, so if they put you on a pedestal and they think you're great, whilst that's very validating and nice in the moment to receive, no doubt, there goes the Walt Disney credits.
Yeah,
actually, there's a bit of caution there because they don't know you. They haven't spent enough time with you. So remember, it's time spent together. And often you're looking, as I said, it's like you have two puzzle pieces of 100-word puzzle and you're trying to make the whole picture. So, you have to give it time to discover the whole picture. And if someone does come on strong, slow it down, stick to your boundaries, don't cancel your friends, get a good night's sleep, go to your yoga class, don't make that last minute date, and give it time to see.
What about you're invested, you're like, again, you just think everything's amazing, and then they back off? I think more often than not, what happens is somebody tries to get that attention back, and you put the work in, and maybe you do some grand gestures, or
I know, because you want to get back to that version of the relationship. But the truth is, and this is a bitter, hard, difficult truth I've definitely had myself, which is what you are experiencing right now, the confusion, the isolation, the disappointment, that's the relationship. And I think it's about hard, very brutal. But again, like, I'm going to see the light at the end of the tunnel, because once you have some acceptance and go, actually, that was a bit of a mirage, what I experienced there, this is the reality, then you can go, is this the kind of relationship I want to experience? Probably not.
Yeah.
And we have all, or not, maybe not all, but a lot of us, myself included, have definitely had experiences of feeling really misled, really let down. Don't let that color your whole dating experiences, though, because that isn't what you're always going to have. Not everyone is like that. So again, sometimes I think the sooner you can get out, if you can, the better, because you've got all those opportunities then to go and meet the people who can give you everything that you want. And it might not quite have the same amount of bells and whistles on it as that person did at the start, but you might find something that's truer, more consistent, and more real. There
was an Instagram post that I mean, there's a few posts that you've done recently where I just thought, oh, this is such good stuff. But if you don't mind me sharing the one that you wrote at the end of September, good dating is more about being than showing. When you like someone, it's tempting to rush in to tell them all about why you're great. However, this can accidentally communicate, choose me, choose me. Remember, this is a two-way street of choosing, so don't be in a rush to tell someone why you're great. You are great. Hold that conviction and just be, which again, it kind of goes back to like what we were just talking about, I feel, in terms of you're trying to get something back and you're like, but look how fantastic I am. And
right, again, so it's a trap. When it's like, oh, if they could just realise that I'd be such a great mum, or I'm so smart, or I'm not like that. Again, it's like, oh, that awful. It's a bit of our ego, which we all have. It's nothing to be, again, feel bad about. Again, I think it's just human nature. But it's, again, recognize when you're getting tangled up in something, trying to prove your worth to someone. It's better just to sit in your worth and understand that, again, the best people for you will just inherently recognize that. You won't have to overcome a mountain of challenges to show who you are to someone. And again, that's, again, very much anti the rom-com narrative, which says actually that there are trials and tribulations and you have to prove yourself and show your worth. This is not a movie. This is not a movie. This is not a drill.
Yeah. As we're starting to wrap things up, Hayley, I have to ask, do you have any advice on how we can improve our chances to find real love?
First of all, and it's not like we have to be perfectly happy, fully self-actualized people, but if there's something glaringly going on in your life that you need to take a look at that as priority. Because if you hate a living situation, you have an unhealthy relationship with drugs or alcohol, your anxiety is really high, then all of this is going to meddle with that process of getting to know someone. And we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be super happy by ourselves. We have to be in a relatively neutral space. Secondly, think about, how can I date? How can I find enjoyment in this process? Do I need to meet more single friends? Do I need to change up how I'm meeting someone? Do I need to really slow it down this time when I'm getting to know someone? Keeping on the fact that it's not about impressing someone else, it's actually about expressing who you are. So the communication skills you learn around dating, I think, are not about dressing you up to be someone you're not. They're meant to be about getting you to express who you actually are with real self-acceptance. So thinking about, does this decision I'm taking with dating right now, does it support my self-esteem? Am I on the right track with this? It's a big, complex picture, but that's what me and my team also, we try and help people with. But it's good to do the dating coaching thing at the right time.
I mean, relationships and mental health, the two are so intrinsically linked. And you go to therapists and you might talk a bit about your relationships, but just dating coaches, I guess, must be therapists to a different degree, but it feels that way, at least.
Yeah, I think, again, it's tricky because we're an unlicensed, unregulated industry. Yeah. So you have to be careful, and also I find with coaching myself, it's a personal relationship. So you have to find the right coach for you as well, who you feel understands you and gets you. And it's coaching. It should be practical and action orientated, and there should be tangible stuff there that you can do. So yeah, I would say, dating advice is very varied. So
yes.
Look for that which resonates with you.
Yeah.
Work with a coach who you feel really aligns with you. And you can also start out by, again, agreeing some things that you both like to have as a result of that experience of working together. So I think with all relationships, advise caution, but also know that I really, really believe dating can be fun, it can be enjoyable, and it can be a way to get to know yourself better.
Yeah, and don't go for the manipulative type of coaches that are like, this is how you get that person back. This is how you get this person to love you. Red flag, red flag.
Yeah, red flag all over that dating advice. Get out of there.
Run. Well, speaking of the practical, last question. I ask every guest to set us some homework based on the theme of the episode. So in this case, Hayley, what is a simple, actionable first step that we can take when it comes to dating best practices that will help us on our mission to building a happier life? And
I'm just going to put on a big, I said the big question here, which I mentioned just earlier now, which is, does this decision support my self-esteem? ? That's a great one for thinking, should I stay in that situationship? Should I be bold and, approach that person at that speed dating event? Think about whether every decision we make is adding a little link in the chain of our self-esteem and where we want to get to. So make the decision that's going to push you in the direction that you want to go in.
Oh, that's such amazing advice, Hayley. You really are such a good speaker. And if for more on you, you're at Hayley Quinn X on Instagram, and your website is hayleyquinn.com. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, Gabby. Much appreciated.
I'm not sure if you could hear Hayley saying bye properly. I did try to increase the volume levels, but for some reason the sound went a bit weird just when she was signing off. Anyway, I wanted to acknowledge that she did say bye, and what a cool chick she is. So thanks again, Hayley, and thank you to you for taking the time to tune in and listen to this episode of the Happier Life podcast with me, Gabby Sanderson. Now, this is important, guys. If you are suffering with your mental health, there is a crisis button on the My Possible Self app, which will signpost you to the correct information for immediate expert advice. Those of you who are listening on one of the podcast platforms, the My Possible Self app is completely free to download, and you can access all of the content, so please don't worry about it costing you anything. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review if you found this episode helpful, please. And to find and follow us on social media, we are at My Possible Self, and I've been at Radio Gabby. So please do take care, and I'll see you on the next one with some more awesome relationship advice. Bye for now.